Well, it's IT that raises the issue, but it's not an IT issue. It is a business issue about communication. But IT needs to have a very precise description of what the business wants and what the business is doing. And therefore, they need to have methods to write down this very precise model. This
what are you doing? Yeah.
What are you doing? What is the goal? What are your objectives? How does it all get together? Mm-hmm. So they are raising the issue. They need that information, but they are not the owner of that information. Maybe they can support in getting that information there, just like an architect that makes a building. He has to ask, well, what kind of building do you want? Where do you want to use it for? But he is not the owner of that information.
When I started my career, which is a few years ago now, my first jobs were in a category of work called organization and methods. At that time, yes, we had computer systems, but they were not the only thing that was taking place. And so the whole community of organization and methods people, where they're looking at how does the business work, how can the business work, and those organizations were actually part of a corporation or a government agency. As computer systems grew, they all, for the most part I should say, they were dismantled and the people were pushed into the IT departments. And therefore the IT department really became the only formal place within the corporation to actually deal with change per se. And so therefore this is why I believe this is coming out of IT. There's nowhere else in our corporations that have the responsibility for spearheading and leading change. And we expect the people responsible for running the business day to day to also be the ones changing the business. Well, they're measured on running the business. So we've lost the home for this, and I think this is why IT is raising the issue.
Yes, because it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
It's also a question of budgets and of finance, because IT over the years has taken, has absorbed most of the training budget for a lot of this kind of thinking that needs to be done. And so IT, of course, is going to naturally want to educate itself as fully and as responsibly as possible about the things that IT needs. That's just natural. But at this point in time, you know, we need to rethink the finance, rethink the budgeting, rethink the education to bring back more resources to the creative thinkers, the business analysts, the people who can think outside of the box and encourage that within corporations and organizations. I was recently visiting a large healthcare ministry in North America, and the manager, a high-level manager, says, you know, after all of these years of IT innovation, I'm not sure that my business people can even think creatively anymore. Mm-hmm. Yes. That's a problem. That's a big problem.
What they're talking about.
That's exactly what we're talking about, and that's going to need some encouragement, and encouragement takes the form of the right kind of training and involvement, which comes back to budgets. So until the budgeting is changed and reproportioned a little more intelligently, I think that we will continue to have the same kind of problem.
Basically, I think what we've fallen into is the idea that as we get lean, we think that working harder can replace working smarter. And we've taken the people out who are the thinkers, the analysts, the designers, and we think that just reducing operational costs and having those people do more work is the answer. And clearly, maybe we're doing the wrong work.
Mm-hmm. For the most part, we find that they are already working as hard as they really can and should work. But it's not a question, and for the most part, of motivation and involvement and time. As Roger says, it's a question of, are we providing the infrastructure needed to work smart instead of harder? And that's what's missing.
The focus is very much on tools and technology, and that's really a distraction to the whole thing. So all the projects that I've been involved in that were started as an IT project. Many times, for some kind of technical failure, the IT project is stopped. It is a failure. And then all the good things that people have learned is really thrown away.
Now, I want to clarify, there's nothing in what we're saying that is negative, really, with respect to IT. Let's be careful how we look at this.
Yes.
We found time and time again by introducing some of these ideas that it enables the IT people to do a better job and a faster job and a job that really solves the business problem. So they're very happy with having these specifications, these definitions, these models, the semantics, because for them that addresses the hard things, which is what does this stuff mean and how does it really fit together as a business solution.
But the paradox is, of course, that once you are in the IT, that you are not in the business, and that's sort of
I'd like to add a note of optimism to that, and that is, in my experience in the process world, there's a common capability called the Center of Expertise for Business Process Management. And it almost invariably starts with people in IT realizing they need to develop that competency and then use that to interface between the business and the IT people. But usually it starts in IT. But in my experience, after several years of starting to make some success, it's not unusual to see that group move out of IT and go over to the business. And in some cases, even to report to somebody called a Chief Process Officer. I think in the area of business processes, whether we acknowledge them, recognize them, or whatever, they're there. Our customers know they're there, our regulatory bodies know they're there, our shareholders know they're there. They're there. We may not manage them per se. And I would suggest to managers getting started, start with something, start with anything, learn how to do it, and then gradually expand it width-wise across the organization, and to start to identify a set of processes which represent all the things the organization does. Very thin, very high level, but just to start to support what other people in this discussion have said, to get a common definition of what we do.
Yes.
And start to use those terms in a consistent way across the organization and start to connect the dots. We often talk about in business processes that our job is to connect the dots, but in order to connect the dots you have to collect the dots. And once you've collected them and you connected them, you can correct them. And that's really what we're trying to do moving forward there, but start somewhere.
And it doesn't need to cost more, because you already have these processes and you already have these rules, and what the question is whether you are managing them in the most effective way. And there is often some redundancy there, and if you remove that, you have time and money that you can use to manage them in a better way.
Or to do other things.
Or to do other things.
Yeah.
I think the one thing I'd like to say in summary is that managers can take comfort in that these techniques that we've talked about are tried and proven within companies today. Our company has been in business now 14 years, and over that period we've had hundreds of clients. Not everything we've done has been successful, but we've had very notable successes with the exact kind of things we've been talking about. So there are methods, there are techniques, there are tools, there are proven successes in the area. So you don't have to feel like you're in a whole new area of innovation and be the first one out there, because that's just not the case. The problem is you don't hear enough about the successes that have happened.
People have to be, focused on doing this kind of work, and then probably measured on how they do this work. That's probably what's going to happen. And then you have to figure out how to do it iteratively and incrementally over some long period of time. It's probably never going to stop. It's not a project. Enterprise architecture is a way of life.